So hi everyone, I'm Matthias. How many, oh, it's not close. So how many in the room of you are using Python, still have to deal with Python 2? Well, quite a few, and would like to use Python 3 or are using Python 3, probably a lot. So we'll go through how we did the transition for one of my projects. So about me, I have a really strong French accent, so if you don't understand, it's probably because I'm not speaking well, so feel free to raise your hand and ask me to repeat. This is just to give you an excuse to ask me to repeat. So I'm a postdoc. I mostly work on IPython and Jupyter as my day job at the Berkeley Institute for Data Science in Berkeley, and you can find me there on Twitter and on GitHub. And also a small announcement, we have JupyterCon, which will happen in New York City in about 10 days. If you like Jupyter and would like to come, there are still tickets available. So what this talk is not about. Is Python 2 or Python 3 the right choice? You have your own reason. Maybe you have to stick to Python 2, but maybe you want to migrate to Python 3 because you prefer it. And it's not also about should you migrate to Python 3. You have to choose your own reason. This is about how we can make things easier for both community, because sometimes you have tensions to make the transition from one to the other as easy as possible. It's how we migrated IPython to be Python 3 only, because we care about all our users. For all developers, it was hard to have to maintain both Python 2 and Python 3. It was a lot of overhead, especially since many of our developers are volunteers, free times. They just don't want to deal with Python 2 issues. They open a PR for Python 3. It breaks on Python 2. We say, no, we can't merge a PR. They just go away. So it was a loss of volunteers. And for our users as well, we want the transition to be the least frustrating for them, so that it's just works. I'll be describing how we did that and how you can do it with your libraries. How to do it right and potentially better than us, because we were one of the biggest projects to do the first dropping of Python 2 support, and we did something really wrong. It could have been way worse, but you can do better than what we did. And if you do that as well in your libraries, we will really have you to send us back your feedback so that we can have a nice page on the internet somewhere that says, hey, here is how to stop support for Python 2 and how to do it without breaking your user workflow. Python 2 versus Python 3 is an example. You can this can also apply to, for example, when you will drop support for Python 3.3, or maybe in a couple of years when you drop support for 3.7. It's just easy to refer to Python 2 and Python 3 because people understand this example. Even if you're a project that is Python 2 only, this only applies to you, because you can then say, well, this is not going to work on Python 3, and then not disturb the workflow of Python 3 users. All of this information that you will see in this talk is or should soon be, I would be happy to get help, on the python3statement.org, which is a list of projects who are vouching to drop Python 2 support before 2020 with a nice timeline, and all the resources on how to do that correctly. We try to keep it up to date, but same thing, it's volunteer work. We're happy to get more eyes. So it looked like that. We even have projects that added themselves on this page yesterday. I merged a PR this morning. And so you see that all of these projects say, well, we are going to store support for Python 2 on our stable release by 2020. And you also have timeline. So in green, you have projects that are compatible both Python 2 and Python 3, and in blue, projects that are compatible Python 3 only. And you see that the red line, which is today, actually it's a couple of months ago, is dangerously approaching 2020 when Python itself stops support for Python 2. And this can be helpful for you to plan in advance and convince your manager, hey, we need to migrate to Python 3 because the library we are using will not be compatible with with the Python we are using. Why did we start that? Because we heard some conversation, for example, NumPy on the science part of Python will probably not drop Python 2 support, while a lot of other libraries that are depending on NumPy are still Python 2 compatible, because they don't want to force that on their dependencies. And the dependencies were, well, why would we drop Python 2? Because NumPy is not going to drop Python 2. And there was a communication problem. They all wanted to, at some point, drop Python 2, but they need to communicate. So we say, well, we are going to make the Python 3 statement. You can say in a couple of years in advance, so we are going to drop Python 2 so that everybody is aware and say, well, if they are doing it, we might as well do it. And so you can find more information on the Python 3 statement .org. Also, a small word about application versus library. Application is something you deploy and have a complete control over, often standalone, like most of the websites you see on the internet are what I'm going to refer to as application. And usually when you migrate application, you pin your dependencies, and it's pretty easy because your manager say, yes, we're going to migrate to Python 3. You make everything Python 3 compatible, and then you switch to Python 3, and then Python 2 just, you can remove the code, and everything works. When you're writing libraries, open source libraries, you often want your dependencies to be loose. You want to be compatible both Python 2 and Python 3, and your users may want to change version of your library, so you need to keep the compatibility as wide as possible. I'm not going to talk about how to migrate applications. There are a really good talk about that, the PyBay2017 keynote, Python 3 at Instagram, where they got really nice performance improvement, and they show you how they did that. And bringing Python 3 to LinkedIn, which was 1 hour ago in the room upstairs. I'm looking forward to see that online. And so library, you don't control deployment environment, but you still get issues from your users. And so you want to keep a wide compatibility range. You want to keep your user happy. You want to minimize the work for developers. And sometimes you're scared because you know that your users know where you live and you don't want to break things for them. So that started by us wanting to scratch our own itch to release IPython 6. We wanted it to be Python 3 only, and we care about Python 2 users. The problem is that if users on Python 2 were to run pip install IPython upgrade, they would not get the last version of IPython 5, which was compatible with their version of Python. They would get IPython 6, and at important it would break, and we wanted that to not be the case. We want users to just pip install IPython, they're on Python 2, they don't realize that there is a new version which is not compatible, they just get the latest version. We also wanted to keep a long-term support branch, which means potentially releasing a new version of IPython 5, which is compatible both Python 2 and Python 3, and maybe if we think we're really wrong, IPython 7 might want to be again compatible Python 2. And the core of the problem was that basically users ran pip install IPython -- upgrade, and what they read in their mind look like that. I'm installing IPython, I'm doing some magic, success, and then they do Python, they import a library, and then they see something that feels for them like syntax warning, error, I just don't like you. You know that errors don't read tracebacks. I don't read tracebacks either because I'm a user of other library. I only read tracebacks of my own libraries. So what can you do about that? So let's roll back to 2016 and think, like, what can we do? How can I release a package which would be compatible only with Python 3? Tell all our users to just pip install IPython lower than 6 when they are on Python 2. The problem is that users do not always read documentation before installing. They had years of habits of running these commands. They will just not understand why suddenly things break for them while it was working before. You have a lot of scripts on the internet that are assuming that pip install IPython works, and you probably don't want to patch all of these. And of course, if you have an error message, scripts and users do not read error messages. And dependencies, if you release a new version of a library which is not compatible or only works with one version of Python, it means that all people who depend on you need to update their libraries to have conditional dependencies. If I am on Python 3, I want the newest version. If I am on Python 2, I want the latest, another version. That's become a mess, especially for everything that has already been released. Can we rename? So we said, well, maybe we can call IPython -Python 3 or for a package. That's going to void a lot of the documentation on the internet and on Stack Overflow. And it might make import name different from the package name, which is really tricky to explain sometime. You all have installed Jinja or instead of Jinja 2, I guess. So we would like to avoid renaming. Can we release a package which is wheel only? Wheels can be Python 2 or Python 3 only. The problem is that there is a lack of granularity, which is here we might want to say, well, only 3.3 and above. And many downstream distribution requires SDs to build like on Debian and other stuff like that. So we don't really like with only. We can also try to think about a meta package. I'm going to make something that virtually have no code, but that rely, depending on whether you're on Python 2 or Python 3, on a different core implementation. This has, again, a lot of issues, especially if people upgrade the meta package. It won't upgrade the dependencies, so you still have to deal with bug reports. We even went into looking at the code source of pip and found pip features, which would allow you to install different SDs depending on the Python version. And we ask the maintainer if it was supported, and say, well, no, it's a feature you should not use. We're going to remove this feature. And as Raymond Ettinger would say, he was in the room, he did that at the keynote, there must be a better way. The new way, Python requires. Since December of last year, with pip 9+ and setuptools 24.3, in your setup.py, you can put these new keywords, Python requires, and put it version specifier. And if you do that, and your users have a new version of pip, and do pip install, it will adhere to Python requires, which means that if your package say, well, I'm only 3.4+, and the pip install on Python 2, pip will just say, well, I'm not even going to consider this package. I'm going to get to the next version, which is compatible. You should not invoke setup.py directly, because if you do that, even on a package that doesn't have this, this keyword, it will pull dependencies without looking at this field. So you need to use pip install dot or pip install whatever. In greater detail, the Python requires metadata comes from PEP 345, which was written and accepted in 2005. And for almost 11 years, almost nothing implemented it or understood it. So it was thought as an issue from the Python core developers, but just nobody had time. And there are, again, a lot of things like that that have PEP, that have been accepted, that have not been completely implemented. It requires setup tool greater than 24.3, because when you build it, on your local machine as a developer, setup tools need to understand this keyword, and if your user does not have setup tools greater than 24.3 and they install something and pip pulls the SDist and try to build, well, when they try to build, it will say a keyword does not understand and will just fail. So one thing you should really be careful is your users need to upgrade setup tools. And pip greater than 901, all versions of pip lower than 9 were completely ignorant of this metadata, who was not even exposed by PyPI, and we did all the patching upstream, and that's taken care of by you. The only thing you need to make sure is that your users are up to date with pip. So call to package maintainers. Use tool and service that respect requires Python. If you're in a company that does have a pip mirror, make sure that it mirrors correctly with this field, and use pip 9+, upgrade your pip, and upgrade your setup tools. And if you're a package maintainer, also please tag with require Python, even if you're still compatible with Python 2 and Python 3. Please set at least the field greater than 1, so that maybe someone else later will come and update it to the right value once you change your requirement for Python. That's also, of course, valid if you require Python lower than 3. I think the case is less important because we have less people that are only compatible with 2. Because people usually don't go from 3 to 2, but it might be the case. The hardest part is to tell all your users to update pip, because you need all your users to update. If one of your users is not up to date, they might get an issue. So you need to ask your users to upgrade pip. You need to remind your user to update. You need to make sure your user updates, and then almost everything is fine. For our users on Python 3, IPython 6 was compatible Python 3, it should be perfectly fine. And for our users on Python 2, if they have a new version of pip, they will just not get the version, the latest version. They will get the latest compatible version. The only drawback is for all pip users on Python 2, then pip would download the wrong version of the package, try to install it, and it will fail. So now what we want to do is try to take care of this part. We want defensive packaging. We don't want the new version to be installed on the user machine. Because if they upgrade and install a broken version, then their system is broken. if they try to install and it fails at install time, then their system is still in a consistent state where they can work and do what they were meaning to do, not upgrading your software, and potentially come back to that and look at the error messages and what's happening later to fix their system. Still, problem will arise, but you can greatly decrease the maintenance burden for all your developers. You need to update your documentation, CI, and script to use pip, because users works by copy-pasting examples from place you don't imagine. You need to communicate really in advance that you're going to stop support for Python 2, but you still care for your users, and say, well, we'll still care about you. You need to update pip, and you will still get maintenance LTS version, but if you don't, your system may break. You need to keep setup.py and need.py Python 2 compatible and catch error early. I'll come back to that later. And for clear error messages in complicated situations, don't hesitate to use multi-line strings. You can make a nice explanation to your user, which is half a screen, and the user will not come and bug you on the mailing list. So tell everyone to use pip install. I think I've said it enough. Otherwise, it will fail, and do not use Python setup.py package. Otherwise, the dependency might not be dealt with correctly. Communicate, I've already said that. And you want to keep setup.py Python 2 compatible, because if setup.py runs on Python 2, the most probable reason is that pip is lower than 9. And if the users have an error message which is syntax error or I don't understand this function, they will never get this information. They will just get the information that the package just does not work. While if you keep your setup.py compatible, you can handle the logic yourself and ask your users to upgrade pip. For example, this is a shortened version of the one we have. If you are on 3.3 or below, we say, well, the most probable reason is that you have an old version of pip. Update your pip and try again. You will have some users that work from master, so it means that a couple of years ago, they have pip install minus e dot, and they will just git pull, which means that they will never see the error message in setup.py. So same thing in your init.py, which is the first file that will be loaded. You catch the error yourself, and you say, hey, you've pulled to a version which is incompatible. Either migrate to Python 3 or roll back to an earlier version. So now it's fine for Python 3 users, because they're going to have a library that just works. They don't even realize you have this issue. For all Python 2 users that have new pip, still same thing. They won't install a new version. And all pip users on Python 2 will still get an issue. They will download the version, and the version will not upgrade. But one thing it will not break their system. It will still have a functioning version of your library. And two, they will get a nice error message that tells them what to do and why things broke, and not just a large trace bag that they don't understand. And you have still some edge cases, but that should be the minority. Oops. So do you know the difference between theory and practice? Well, in theory, it's the same. So result for IPython, we got 2 bug reports. During our release candidate phase, someone told us, hey, if I Python setup.py, another package that depends on IPython, I got IPython 6 instead of IPython 5 or Python 2. We're like, we didn't know that. We added it to the slides and to our documentation. We can't do much about that, except filling a bug with setuptools and wait. So remember, don't use Python setup.py. Second bug report, after a couple of days of investigating, my bad, I thought the pip upgrade message error was completely irrelevant. When I upgrade pip, it works. So some users, most users, don't read your error messages. And remember, upgrade pip. This also tells us one other things. It tells us not to trust what our users are saying. They might be lying to us even without knowing it, because they don't really understand what's happening. So what can you do about that? You can ask the numbers. For those of you who don't know, all of PyPI download statistics are on BigQuery. So if you have a Google account, you can, about every month, analyze about 1 terabyte of download logs for free, and see how, if you're publishing a library, what kind of users do you have? Are they on Windows? Are they on Mac? Are they on Python 2 or Python 3 with version of pip, etc., etc. And so before we released IPython 6, we looked at the statistics, and we had about 65% of our users that were using new pip. We were communicating a lot, so this increased a bit, and we couldn't really get more users to that. So we say, well, we're going to release and see what's going to happen. And so this is a download count of IPython. In blue, it's IPython 5, so compatible both Python 2 and Python 3, and in orange, it's IPython 6, which is Python 3 only. Through time, I've slightly regularized the data because every weekend you have a huge dip into the number of downloads. So this is about roughly the total download per day. And what you see is as soon as we release IPython 6, we get a huge spike in downloads, and that quietly come back to the original number of downloads through time. If you see the gray line, you probably don't see it on the video projector. Just at the point of the large dip, it's a request that was broken. So it means that when the request broke for a couple of hours, actually most of PyPI got a lot of number of downloads that decreased a lot. And around day 155, we released both IPython 6.1, compatible Python 3, and 5.4, compatible by Python 2 and 3 at the same time. So it means that all our users, both from Python 2 and Python 3, did upgrade at the same time, and we'll see why later. Let's narrow down to just our users on Python 3. We see here that as soon as we release IPython 6, most of our users on Python 3 are upgrading. We still have some people who have pinned IPython on IPython 5.3 here, I think. Nothing special. We know that everything will work for them, so we're just going to forget them for now. And now let's look at our Python 2 crowd. In blue, you have IPython 5. The shade of blue depends on the version of pip. And in red, you have IPython 6 download. And so here, there are two things. There is one really good thing and one really bad thing. Is that from the two shades of orange, you see only one. That's because all of our Python 2 users that had a new version of pip do not download IPython 6. So that's fine. It means that all of these users, they will just not realize that there is a new version of IPython that doesn't work on their system. And the huge spike we see here is a total download of IPython 6 on Python 2, which is basically broken. It means that these users will download an sdist, and the sdist will raise the error message in the setup.py, hey, you need to upgrade pip. And so we think that we see these users are seeing these error messages, and they're probably upgrading pip and not getting a new version of IPython. But still, this huge peak of download is concerning because it's about half of our users on Python 2 get an error messages. Why is that? I thought we had 65% of users on new pip, which seems to match the light blue versus dark blue of IPython 5 download. So why that? So let's look at the ratio of new pip versus old pip downloads through time. And what you can see that at the beginning, before the release of IPython 6, you have about 65% of new pip users. And as soon as we release IPython 6, we get a large decrease, and suddenly a lot of our users are using old pip. Why is that? Well, we thought for quite some time and realized, oh, but when a user already have IPython installed and the pip install -- upgrade, if they have the latest version, then pip does not download anything, and I don't get this signal on my download statistics. So this means that in this graph, as soon as we release IPython 6, we have a large amount of missing data. Our users on Python 2 that have a new version of pip and are not upgrading because they already have IPython are just missing from there. So we just see the dip because there is no download to compensate for that. How could we have fixed that? Well, we can get a hint of what is the real ratio of our users on old pip and new pip. We could have released a dummy version of IPython 5 without any code change, but just bumping the patch number. Which means that then what's happening is that all our users that are automatically updating will hit PyPI. They say, hey, there is a new version. I'm going to download it and install it. So you get your peak of download. You can get your statistic like that. And for them, it doesn't change anything because the code haven't changed. The other thing you can do is what we did. When we release the next minor version, we release the next minor version of the Python 3 only compatible version and of the Python 2 only Python 2 and Python 3 compatible version, which means that regardless of if your users were on Python 2 or Python 3 and whether they had all pip or new pip, they would download the new version, and you could, and then you don't see for the second release when the two releases happen at the same time, you don't see this dip in pip version, which means that we actually have about 65% of our users that are using a new version of pip. So now we can get back to our total download numbers and look at the transition from 6.0 to 6.1 and 5.3 to 5.4. And we see in orange for our Python 3 users, almost all of them in about a week completely migrate from IPython 6 to IPython 6.1. So that's great. It works, they just haven't pinned anything. And for our Python 5 users, Python 2 users, they migrate mostly to 5.4, but you still have this amount of download of Python 5.3. And then again, we said, well, some people have pinned 5.3, which is not great. They probably did not realize that there were going to be a new version of 5 that would fix bug. And we realized why. It's because we told them to upgrade pip, but not all of them can upgrade pip. So they pinned IPython because they couldn't upgrade pip. What we did not tell them is how to pin. And they probably pinned with equal IPython 5.3 instead of saying lower than 6. So that's something we learned, and that we telling you, tell them to pin with lower than instead of equal. So a few migration tips, regardless of everything that you've seen here. You can release a patch version with zero source change to see how your download statistics are changing and get a hint of what is your ratio of users on Windows, on Mac OS, etc. that already have your library installed. Otherwise, you only see in the download statistics the users that are installing your library in a fresh environment. It might be CI, it might be production, but all your users that are just trying to upgrade, you won't see them. You need to have really good error messages telling how to fix it and not what it failed. Again, in setup.py, if I tell my users that the software is not Python 2 compatible, that's not what they care about. What they care about is how to get into a system that works and get the latest compatible version. And so we need to tell them to upgrade pip, or what we forgot to do, tell them to pin IPython with IPython lower than 6 instead of equal 5.3. You can also, if you're adventurous, use this weird syntax that I learned about version numbers. The tilde equal mean compatible with, which here for 5.1 mean compatible with 5.1, which is 5.1 or greater but lower than 6. Communicate in advance. I think we did a pretty great job to all our users, all our mailing list. We said, well, in about a year, we're going to stop support for Python 2, make sure you update your documentation and so on and so forth. And we only got 2 really bug reports of people complaining for good reason, except one. So one really bug report. So practical tip after the migration. Resist the urge to delete code if you are thinking about releasing ever minor version of your old version, because usually as soon as you drop Python 2 support, all your coders are happy. They will delete your branches, your conditional statements, they will remove import and so on and so forth. And now you will have a patch that you want to backport, and you will have hundreds of conflict, and you have to rewrite the patch for another version. So if you can keep your new code base still roughly Python 2 compatible with only a couple of things that are Python 3 only, so your project won't work, but still have some code to be compatible with Python 3 for about a year, that would greatly decrease the maintenance burden on your developers. And so to conclude, on IPython, we have IPython 6, which is Python 3 only. We are still updating IPython 5x, and we have an LTS branch. We are feeling the pain of having removed Python 2 code. The transition has gone relatively well, and it will get only easier. We're still discovering things, like these graphs are only a week old, so we still have some data managing to do. And on converting package to Python 3 only, you need to use packaging tools that do respect requires Python. And you need to encourage everyone everywhere to use pip9. That's the most pressing things, because you need everyone to upgrade, and that takes time. You can and you should follow defensing packaging practices to leave your user system in a consistent state, that is to say not install a version which is incompatible, and give them a nice error messages with multi-lines. And we will really like you to read and contribute to the Python 3 statement, especially the practicalities sections that regroup all of this information on how you can decide to drop support for Python 2 for your package without breaking for Python 2 users. And also add your project onto the list of packages that will drop support for Python 2 before 2020, so that everyone gets a signal, hey, I'm going to drop support. Here is what to do, and please be ready. So thanks, and remember that Python 3, Python 2, that's hard. The problem is that Python 2 is not that great with Unicode, so we need to be compatible with them. And thank you. You can find all the slide materials here, the source for the graph, and all the code, which is really crappy, there. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
So, thank you for the cool talk. So this requires Python, or is it Python-requires? And does bdist respect it? And where do you put it? Is it an argument for setup.py, or is it an argument in some other file in your packaging, or where do you write that?
So is it requires Python or Python requires? The answer is it depends where. And I'm not the PEP author. So in your setup.py, I think it's, I can check here.
Because I know install requires, but I'm not sure about the Python requires thing.
So the Python requires is in setup.py. I never remember if it's setup, if it requires Python, it's there. Yeah. It is. New way, greater detail is here. So in setup.py, it's Python underscore requires.
Okay, because you had uppercase in your
So
conclusion, so I wasn't sure if that was the same thing or
because
different, or
in the pkg.info file that is generated by setup.py, it requires Python with uppercase and dash.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So depending,
right, but
so depending on
what
where
it generates is its own thing, but
Yes.
where you write it is, okay, in setup,
setup.py. If you're using
Python
setup.py,
under
it's
requires.
there
Cool.
in setup.py. And there was another part of your question, I don't remember.
Does bdist, when you do create a wheel, does it respect this argument?
So yes. In the end, your metadata will, oh, I don't have internet, will appear on pypi.org. So basically, when you see the list of packages and you look at the source of the source code of PyPI, you will see in the HTML link. The HTML link will have a data attribute. So here we have IPython here, we have IPython 5.2, and let's do not info, let's view the source, and let's do data requires Python. You see that some links, you can technically make it separately for sdist and wheels, but basically each link would get a data requires Python and your escaped version specifier here, and that tells pip just ignore this link completely if you're on the wrong version of Python. So you could technically do it on a per release artifact basis. The current code of warehouse and PyPI, well, the current code of PyPI is not tested, so it was hard to patch, and the current code of warehouse does not allow you to make something different between the sdist and the bdist. So the sdist and the bdist will all have the same attribute for now. in 10 years, maybe someone will come along and say, I have a reason to want the wheels to be compatible with less versions than the SDist, but they have to write the code. Make sense? That make kind of sense. You can rewatch the video.
Sorry. This is maybe like a naive factual question, but when you have a long-term support branch that you're releasing on PyPy, is there anything special you have to do to, when you update, you add new versions and they're lower than the versions that you've already updated? Is there anything special, or it just orders it for you?
So pip have its own ordering logic, which means that it will decide which version it picks. So if I were to release a 5.9, for example, pip would still see the 6.0 as greater than 5.9 for Python 3. So you have different way of doing it, but yes, you can release an LTS, everything will work fine as long as your setup requires Python. It works fine. I can even decide now to release a 7 and say that the 7 is again compatible with Python 2. It will work fine as long as your users have Python pip 9 and above.
It worked that way even before the pip existed.
Yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to release hotfixes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Matthias.